Hello, everyone. Welcome to Or This. This is my Monday morning quarterbacking of the scriptures and the sermon from the previous Sunday. And this video is from Sunday, August 6th. 6th? Yeah, August 6th. The scriptures assigned for the day we're following the semi-continuous Old Testament readings. So we had Genesis 32, verses 22 to 31. We had Psalm 17, verses 1 through 7 and 15. Second reading was Romans 9, verses 1 through 5, and Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 through 21. I preached on the semi-continuous Old Testament reading because that's what I've been doing throughout the summer. But I have to say that, first of all, it's very strange to not preach on the reading from Matthew, which was the story of the feeding of the 5,000 from Matthew's Gospel. And so, as I read that scripture and thought about it, because I didn't focus on it throughout the week, I was focused on the Old Testament reading. So mostly I heard it the 2 times that I read it for worship on Saturday and then on Sunday. And actually I read it a 3rd time for the recording that we have on our Good News by Phone line. So in those multiple times of reading the scripture, I was struck by 2 things. The first thing that I was struck by was when the disciples voice the fact that it's dinner time and people are getting hungry and Jesus, you're talking too long. You need to break it up so that they can go to the villages and find something to eat. Jesus says to them, you give them something to eat. You give them something to eat. And of course they scrounge around and find the 5 loaves and 2 fish. But what it made me think of was the importance for Jesus in his disciples playing an active role in the ministry. That they aren't just those, just like the crowds who are sitting and listening, soaking it all in. I mean, they've been soaking it all in for not 14 chapters, but a good 10 chapters of the story. They've been spending all their time with Jesus and seeing what he does and listening to his teaching. So at this point, Jesus wants them to be active in the work. And Jesus says, you feed them. Now, were we to assume that they would know what Jesus was going to do, that Jesus could feed 5,000 people? Well, apparently not, according to the story. They find these 5 loaves and 2 fish, but they say, but what's that amongst so many people? Actually, what it says in Matthew's Gospel is, we have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. In one of the other Gospels, one of the disciples brings that forward and says, we have 5 loaves and 2 fish, but what is that amongst so many people? So I found it interesting that just kind of resonated with me. Reading this, what if you read the story and you read that line as Jesus speaking to you? You give them something to eat. Our world is hungry. They are certainly physically hungry, but they're also spiritually and emotionally hungry for more than what's happening in their lives. We are Jesus' disciples, and many of us are studying scriptures, hearing them every weekend, hearing sermons, so we know them better than maybe some who don't spend time in them. So what's keeping you from feeding the world with the love of God, with the good news of Jesus? Maybe you don't feel as though you have enough to be able to do this. Enough knowledge, enough courage. Well, the story continues then. when they offer the 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus says, bring them here. Bring it here. Bring me what you have. And Jesus is able to bless it and distribute it to everybody who's gathered. And everybody eats their fill. They all ate and were filled. So it wasn't just like, well, that's enough to hold me over until I get home. It was, they all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. So over 5,000 people were full, were satisfied, and there was plenty left over. I think that's a good reminder of the power of sharing, the ability to take a little bit of what everybody has and be able to make enough for a large group of people. Or to even give, to see what we have as plenty, and to be able to share of our plenty for those who don't have enough. We certainly have enough food in our world. We don't have a supply problem with food. We have a distribution problem with food. We have those who have more than enough, and then we have those who do not have enough. I know it every time I have to throw away food from my daughter's plate. We have enough. We have more than enough. And so those who have more than enough are called to share with those who don't have enough. And then nobody has to be hungry. But there's also, I think, more to this. Certainly this reminds us of God's provision for our physical need for eating, that there is plenty. It is a matter of sharing that plenty. But it also reminds us that in those moments when we feel like there is a scarcity of what is needed, so for the disciples, a scarcity of food. Maybe for us, we feel like there's a scarcity of knowledge of the Bible, scarcity of understanding of the faith and God. There's a scarcity, we have a scarcity of courage, a scarcity of ability to talk with people about faith or talk with people at all about anything, if we don't know them very well. When a lot of times as Lutherans, when it comes to talking about our faith with others, we see scarcity, scarcity, scarcity. We don't have enough of what is needed in order to talk with others about our faith. But what do the disciples do? They share it with Jesus, and Jesus says, I will do something with it, and I will feed who is hungry. So we take what we have, even if we think it's the most meager amount of, like I said, knowledge or Bible knowledge or faith or whatever, and we say, okay, Jesus, people need to hear the good news, need a listening ear, need support in their life. So use my meager offering of myself, my life, my listening ear, my time, so that people might be fed relationally or spiritually or emotionally. It's not about what we feel we can or can't do. It's about what Jesus can do. And Jesus can feed over 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's a power beyond our own. But Jesus is a power beyond his disciples. But what did Jesus say initially? You give them something to eat. That means you, follower of Jesus, have a role in this ministry. And through you, this power of Jesus that is displayed in this story, that power will feed those who we come across. who need to be fed in some way. It's a really cool story, so I just gave you a little mini sermon on it as I thought about it from yesterday. You give them something to eat. You have a role in this kingdom, in the ministry of Jesus. And it's not about what you think you have or don't have to fulfill this role. It's about the power of Jesus at work through you, through me, through all of us. Jesus will work, do what needs to be done to feed people that we encounter in our lives. So thank you for watching. Feel free to submit some comments on Facebook or on YouTube about the sermon, about the scriptures, about this video, and hope you have a blessed week.